Welcome. I'm Stephen Motika, the publisher of Nightboat Books. Thanks for joining us at this reading to celebrate our 5 winter titles. Exarch Triptych by Cody-Rose Clevidence, Disgraciado Collected Letters by Angel Dominguez, Ultramarine by Wayne Koestenbaum, Ariel Concave Without Cloud by Sueyeun Juliette Lee, and Madness by Gabriel Ojeda-Sagué. I want to thank Cody-Rose, Angel, Wayne, Juliette, and Gabi for being here this evening to read from their new books. Thanks to the Nightboat staff who worked so hard to bring these beautiful titles into the world and helped organize this evening's event. Lena Bergamini, Lindsay Bolt, Rissa Hochberger, Gia Gonzalez, and Kaylin Ardone. We are recording tonight's event for archival and social media purposes. You are welcome to keep your camera on or off, but we'd like to remind you that there is a possibility that your child will appear in the recording if you decide to leave your camera on. All audience members will be on mute, but if you have any questions or run into any difficulties, please feel free to reach out to either Kaylin or Lena. I hope you'll consider supporting these fabulous writers by purchasing their new books from Nightboat directly. I also hope you'll peruse our other titles, look at our blog, sign up for our email list, and consider becoming a Nightboat book subscriber. And of course, follow us on Instagram. Thanks so much for your support. And now I'll turn it over to Lindsay, who will introduce Cody-Rose.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you so much. Thank you to all of our amazing readers who I had just like such a joyful, pleasurable time working with all of you over the past year. So I'm going to introduce Cody-Rose. Let me pull up my notes. Cody-Rose Clevidence is the author of Beast Feast, Flung Throne, Listen, My Friend, This is the Dream I Dreamed Last Night, and most recently, Oxart Triptych from Nightboat. When I hold Oxart Triptych in my hands and open to any page, I feel as though I'm holding a medieval prayer book. I'm holding a prayer book while standing in an infinitely reflective mud puddle deep in the exalted Ozarks. Cody-Rose is a truly inspiring representative of nature queerdom, a way of being in the world to which we can all aspire. It was such a pleasure and an honor to work with them on this book. And so let's all welcome Cody-Rose Clevidence.
Hi, can you hear me? Can you see me? Does this work? Okay. Thank you also. Thanks for having me. Also, it was a pleasure to work with you as well, and I'm so grateful and thankful, and the book is so beautiful. So yeah, thanks. I'm going to read 2 poems, one from Ozark and one from a sort of newer project that I'm thinking of as like science fiction poems about Earth. Okay. And this one from Ozark is like in 3 vignettes. So, gave a banquet unto the sorrow of it. Quote, insofar as my hand knows hardness or softness, and my gaze knows the moon's light, certain ways the outside has of invading us, and certain ways we have of meeting this invasion. Merleau-Ponty. Quote, the bifurcation of the sensory organs indicates that this body is a form destined to the world, a sort of open circuit that completes itself only in things, in others, in the encompassing earth. Idolatry of the verge, crest of an echo, solipsism of the void, sweet root flesh of the root, hassle of sun, communion of Jupiter, liturgy of geese and lakes, the river of silence as of a river of light, where you were late to your own baptism, naked by the highway 1,000,000 miles from the center of the earth. Paradigm of objects in motion, declension of the verb to be, dripping, come unto me, archangel of the lonesome earth, the vultures raising off the body in slow motion, the heat from the engine still hot under me. I cannot single-handedly baptize the whole wilderness. I will start with this river. And who will prepare the way before me, Son of Man, glistening in the green waters? We are inextricable from the DNA of the world around us, our senses commingled with the sensed, quote, without which there would be no possibility of experience. Listen, I'm trying to tell you something, even though I can't hear myself above the ringing darkness. The stars, mastiffs, and echoes, count me among your numberless eons of seed, acres of permission, parallax of clover, axle of rime upon skin, orbit of pure need. Mars is cresting the southeastern horizon, like a little bitch chasing his shadow. Love is not a harbor. There is no such thing as a gift. The magnolias are still blooming in Ozark. The dam, the river, the vision of it seethe. Damn near put a hurt on me, in me, in me, thick with foam, riddled with gesture, opiate of form, the body, stunning. Had a good spawn there. I've fished with minnows smaller than these. The lawlessness of Arkansas. Lawlessness is a state of grace, where my heart stands like a lonely bird fishing from the dark rocks. Unclench the great dam, O Arkansas of my soul, untriumphant this night. Line of white egrets along the writhing edge where the water rears up. Was it fear that kept you? How did you know how to hold back the flood? Void 2.0, quote, explain how if I cannot leave, heaven is not a prison. Our senses lost in the vast technology of the void, inches, acres, miles of void, cups of void, substratum and cubic millimeter and light years of void, superhighways in the sparkling data streams of void, visions of cloud form, detritus of thought, thoughts just utterly piled up in heaps of void, buckets of void, flecks in the eyes of void, the rushing blood pumping through these thick veins of void, the brightly colored birds that perch on all the beautiful limbs of void, the beady eyes of all the beautiful birds. 1 liter of void poured in the bird feeders, 5 gigabytes of void stored in silos of void, cell phone towers disguised as trees, transmitting void across vast distances of void, the throbbing genitals of void, planting seeds in void to grow more void, those big, beautiful black void flowers that you love so much, dendrites and tendrils and ribbons of void, trucks carrying truckloads of void on the interstate systems of void, fresh laid asphalt of void, cephalopods growing sentient in the bright, calm waters of void. Oh, the multiplicitous arousal of void, the strong thighs of void, the eyes in the peacock tail of void's jealous rages. Void relishes its dominion over void, marigolds and star clusters of void, infernal neural chemistry of void, breaching void, reaching across void to void, suckling at the full teats of void, coral reefs of void, waving their squishy polyps of void by the great rifts of void, whole symphonies of void, played to audiences of void sitting in plush chairs of void while the shimmering chandeliers of void hang ominously in the void overhead. Beauty is in the eye of the void holder, the lichens that grow on the rocks of void, the crystalline structure of void broken down by the enzyme-rich mucus of void, the supermarkets of void with all these swollen and vibrant fruits of void, bananas of void, raspberries of void, pineapples grown in the hot fields of void, sodas of different flavors of void, laughter. My heart was caught in strands of void once, maybe twice, standing in the Walmart of void. I'm not ashamed to admit it. Glowing gases streaming out from the sun of void, driving around in cars of void, the audacity of lovemaking, streams and rivers and fjords of void. We are all gondoliers of void, singing as we paddle the frothy waterways of void, scrolling on our phones of void. Internet and cathedrals of void where God casts his void down. People playing trumpets of void and dancing. Void ejaculates into void. Void replicates excessively in the genome of void. Void gives birth to void and sets void afloat in a reed basket of void towards some great and shining voidtropolis. The stars wheel in the void overhead. The ponies graze in the bright pasture of void. All the sewers of void empty into the sea.
Thank you so much, Cody-Rose. That was fantastic. It's now my pleasure to introduce Angel Dominguez. Angel is a Latinx poet and artist of Yucatec Maya descent living amongst the Santa Cruz Mountains in Bonnie Doon, California. I've had the joy of working with Angel over the course of the last few months on publicity for their new book, Desgraciado, The Collected Letters, just published by Nightboat. Desgraciado is a haunting collection of poetic love letters addressed to Angel's worst enemy, Diego de Landa, a Spanish friar who attempted to destroy the written Maya language in 1562. Reading Desgraciado is like being given the intimacy of reading Angel's diary. Many letters are personal, offering a space beyond the temporal to connect more deeply with their family, community, and kin. I'm endlessly inspired by Angel's passion, humor, and joy. Please join me in welcoming Angel.
Thank you for that beautiful intro. Thank you to everyone who's here. Thank you, Cody, for opening up this portal of void. I'll be thinking about all the flavors of void for the rest of my life. And of course, thank you to Nightboat. I actually just wrote Kaylin an extended note of thanks and gratitude just before this event. So suffice to say, this is a real life dream come true, and it feels like I've only just realized that. So I have a couple of letters for you. Dear Diego, keep your hands up. I never know if we're fighting or about to fuck. Sweat on sweat, tooth to flesh. We keep circling each other like twin sharks in a mermaid's purse. Sometimes I think I am a haunted house on the brink of collapse, and you are the lonesome ghost that won't let me. I think about how growing up, I would get so angry that I would burst into tears. My anger would wash out into an overwhelming sadness, a deep depression in the disappointment of it all. I never wanted to win. And yet that's what this whole house of glass is predicated upon. Haves and have-nots. And nothing is more dehumanizing than money. All of it imaginary. Triggered by the onslaught of the sun, there's nowhere to run when the entire planet is warming. How big a compost bin must I dig to fit the Department of Defense in it? How deep must I dig to bury the 3 Ks that hold up this nation nightmare? How many times do I need to die to get out from under the fallacy of white supremacy? Who am I even fighting anymore? I'm afraid to use words like us, because I honestly don't know what that means anymore. Always feels like I'm fighting, feeling the fists of my great-great-grandfather in a Yucatan ring, moving like a hurricane, folding fools like blades of grass underfoot. Feels like I am always on the floor of my consciousness, blood in my eye, trying to rally a comeback, constantly punching at the foundations of my own family to get to the root of everything. A fist cannot dig a well as well. A fist cannot dig a well as an open hand, cannot dig as well as an open hand. So I go searching for water in the soil of my heart, trying to tour guide myself back to my base origins, always afraid of what I'll find, worry always on my mind. It stresses me out to think about how to best pronounce myself, always wondering what the words might be to best see myself clearly. Sometimes I think eventually I'll find your tongue, golden, riddled with roaches and diamonds, and buried in one of these 3 billion spiral staircases that make a map of my genome. And when I finally figure you out, when I finally find you, I will never, ever let you go. Dear Diego, did I ever tell you that I too live betwixt 2 streams when it rains? I smile at the small similarities and a bashful shame of having written you all these love letters for all these years. What are we to one another? Would you care if you knew I was writing to you all these years later? 455 years is a long time, Diego. long enough to see the oppressor's empire fall and rebuild and fall and become other empires that fall, long enough to see every one of those so-called explorers dead. What am I become to myself? Who am I all these years later? Tato's mother calls it colonial sickness, the latent radiation poisoning of colonization. I call it colonial atrophy. I can almost feel the atoms falling off of me, 5,000 at a time. Cells regenerating every 7 years while their atoms phase in and out of existence. Between realities is where I write to you. Live from the mystery itself, writing love letters to keep myself alive. And I'll end with the first line of the book. Diego, the world is bigger than we will ever know. Thank you.
Hi, I'm thrilled to introduce Wayne Koestenbaum, our next reader of the night. Wayne Koestenbaum is a poet, critic, novelist, artist, performer, and the author of 22 books, most recently Ultramarine, the conclusion to his acclaimed trans notebook trilogy, out this past February with Nightboat Books. On a personal note, I've had the distinct pleasure and honor of collaborating with Wayne both as part and outside of my role as managing editor at Nightboat, most recently as a performer in his film, The Collective, which premiered in December of 2021. It was undoubtedly one of the highlights of my year, offering a space for intertextual play, improvisation, and searching intelligence. Ultramarine does something similar for me as well. The recipient of an American Academy of Arts and Letters Award in Literature, Wayne's literary archive is at Yale's Beinecke Rare Book and Manuscript Library. He is a distinguished professor of English, French, and comparative literature at the City University of New York Graduate Center. It is now my pleasure to introduce Wayne Koestenbaum to the virtual Nightboat stage.
Thank you, Gia. I just showed our film in San Francisco a few days ago. You looked so good on screen in San Francisco. Thanks to everyone at Nightboat, a press I love, and to these other beautiful poets, very inspired already by what I've heard. I'm going to read 2 short sections from Ultramarine. The first is notebook number 12, subtitled Ode to Recent Air. Mutual suck in his townhouse, injudicious. The history of clean faces, stock market nudes. Vuillard tea room glue distemper on canvas. Ode to recent air. It was not my air, and I suffered as a result. My air ended, and he berated me for air ending slowly and unfortuitously. If I were to draw a flower, I would call it Ode to Recent Air, and question the flower for failing me. In need of strong medicine is the flower, accruing significance upon its wet shoe, aghast. A divergence in orange or green, a cast of Arenies, or Aesop's fables, and inundation cold and warm at once. I don't know how to say Arenies, they're the Furies. Orange dress, do I have a right to record observations? Mother fell and hit her head. Dreamt I ate brilliant pink oil paint. Unsure if it was edible, I ate it anyway. It tasted unpleasantly metallic, like a spoon or fork straight out of the dishwasher. Keep your hand moving for 1 whole minute, even if the motion seems obscene. She punitively praises the made thing over spontaneous utterance. High square hair's youthfulness dominates consciousness. Buttock creates new horizon, responsible for comprehensiveness, but hair alone holds sway, curl above declivity. Ask questions of it, don't embroider its wall. Others use their faces as fences, and we take their beauty literally as a sign of remorse, but beauty and interference won't yield. Dementia is cognition smearing itself. We discussed techniques to disguise compromising sexual confessions. A handbook of cheap wigs purchased long ago at the Alhambra, or a music shop in Seville where they didn't carry La Rondine piano vocal scores. At Providence Cafe, my sunglasses almost flew into the toilet. I rescued them from drowning before they got contaminated. Plaster walls dent and bedspreads curlicues need to be described. Sizable calves, thickness and roughness of hair as it presents itself to flat hand, palm receiving hair not as insult, but as greeted plateau. Our friend's brother is a stack of rocks, a ton of drying, dying, butt-oriented Jackie Gleasons. Knowledge forms around the word or, O-R, a place for indecisions to congregate. Your lava produces lava in me. I want to tell intemperate vascular details, a blazon of your satyr characteristics, catalyzing flame, combustion, and nutting. Call it snow. Narrating his cleft, demanding close description. Listen to Beniamino Gili for diction lessons, and then vowel declaim, force meat, vein, noon, none. Symphonic condensation of childish nipples, slides, egoless toward language. Sore throat from trying to read Gogol's Dead Souls paragraph aloud on A below middle C. Examine perineum horizon to see if vistas add up to the three wise men kaleidoscope I anticipate. Recorded a new song about Jane Russell, Lana Turner, my imaginary role in a Douglas Sirk film, and Arnold Scassi's pantsuit designed for Streisand when she won an Oscar, sung to the tune of Albani's Majorca. Ate cantaloupe from John Ashbery farm stand, finished reading Philippe Claudel Cartier in French, recorded Vittoria and Amarilli with uncertain vocal production. Father's fatigued voice, dry from excessive Sanka. And now just a quick bit from a later part in the book, a section called Unseen Ultramarine. And this is maybe the only time in the book where I really come forward and tell you what to think of ultramarine. Just 2 pages. The unseen afterlife is promiscuous, or the fringes of consciousness are promiscuous. Tomorrow say more about why the unseen is promiscuous. Some mystic in a New Haven backyard spotted the God personage suddenly materialized, a ficus beneath a sky too late to qualify as ultramarine. Why characterize sight as aggressive and curious? Why not imagine sight as passive, expectant, accepting whatever bounty is thrown to its cur soul? Notice now I'm calling our plight a curs, cur incurious, because to seem too curious would offend the sky we hope will return to the ultramarine that precedes absolute night. 1,000 stars puncture your misgivings, pierce your distrustful sight sickness, and provide pinched apertures for wording everything differently the next time we make this voyage. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Wayne for that reading from Ultramarine. Now on to Another Kind of Blue. I first met Juliette Lee at a poetry event in New York a dozen years ago, and have followed her brilliant and gorgeous books of poems since, including Solar Maximum and No Comet, That Serpent in the Sky Means Noise, as well as her electric critical writing on poetry and her installation and video work. So I was overjoyed when she reached out about the possibility of Nightboat publishing Ariel Concave Without Cloud, her fifth book of poems, and which came out this week. The book moves through an investigation of light and movement in words and image, the lyric distillation of grief and loss, travels in Iceland and to other Arctic places, study of Silpuri, a traditional Korean dance form, and a deep engagement of the color blue, indeed, ultramarine, azure, cyan. Ariel Concave Without Cloud is a record of the language of starlight traveling through the body and into poetic form. Please join me in welcoming Juliette to the Nightboat virtual stage.
Thank you, Stephen. That is so gorgeous of you to just share. And I'm so honored to be in this company. I'm a little jittery. This is just really lovely. I love every single face and name I'm seeing in this space. So thank you all. Also, I did drink a glass of gin just now. So hey. I'm going to read a little bit from the first poem, which is a longer piece. So I'll just read some sections, but it's titled The Appropriate Information in the Negative. And I'm writing through Sir Isaac Newton's optics in this piece. The appropriate information in the negative. Part of the ensuing discourse about light was written at my desire to comprehend the phenomenon through the lens of my breathing body. I have here published what I think proper to come abroad in all languages with my consent. I am not yet satisfied about it for want of experiments. At the end, I have added some questions. Consider the entire process in a unified manner from the start. A complex and fluid medium, light enters ultimately at the intuitive level, merging into a single coherent function, more commonly recognized as life. With practice, may we become proficient within this amber, dark calling. By trial and error, methods usually normal, or with luck, may I achieve otherwise, which pleases me. When I began, I found I worked. I was aware of the danger of parroting light, yet I proceed. It was obvious to me that there must be some bridge, a basic theory in the medium, a creative means for unveiling the blindness, figurative within. It is essential to translate arcane principles into an applied craft. Out of this all, may we be reformed in negative blue. It has been said at various times, however, that the advent of such vehicles for thought and certain materials obviate our need for insight, reflecting a misconception as it occurs in the central value of the human body. A further misconception emphasizes craft at the expense of human longing. The variations that have evolved are perhaps recognizable. Make an effort to understand. Eagerly await the blue light, its next major advance. Inherent with inescapable structural characteristics, true demands no shortcuts, tricks, or formulas. A comprehensive vision, which is common to the blood's memory, massive cloud of radiant harmonic delay. And I'd like to read this other poem. I'm kind of torn. I'm going to read this one, I think, called The Incident. And the incident is actually like a technical term. It's when a ray of light reflects off of the surface. That's the incident light. But I was really drawn to that language because I noticed how we also use the term incident to describe like a harm, an event, especially in like legalese. There was an incident at like 4th and downtown or whatever. So it's a little bit of like writing through trauma and thinking about the light that reflects off our bodies in the space of survival after. Another way of thinking of resilience, the incident. A narrow band to which one is sensitive, beyond which lies the invisible. Some is inevitably lost. How so? To fall is a great incident. To fall slowly, without injury, is to become a magnitude and reckoning. All things fall gracefully. Are you grateful for what has fallen into you? Standard, average, common, all integrated in the single reading. To make a record, one must capture what is reflected, evaluating what one wants to be represented. In counterclockwise rotation, arms outstretched, feel the sun's hard blue descent into the black coal of your breathing body. Gather without reflection. Gather infinitely, growing fine as a needle's spray along the skin. Surmise the quality of infinite duration, flexing intimate storms into apparel. All dark scintillation honed. I sought to uncover my primary mother's body, firstly by standing alone on the basalt shore. All gleamed with the crystalline equanimity. Stark blue light coursed upwards with suspension, a slow heat dissolved into my pores. Flexing the long stones inside my legs as mass, I moved with a deliberate, calculated pace towards the shore. That which travels from one place to another, interacting with matter, can be transformed. It could be incomplete, or the law would fail if the transfers and transformations were not accounted for. No exact correspondences, an approximation. To form a descriptive system appropriate with minor modifications to a wide range of observations in sound and light, as well as to waves. Can a body be indifferent to the incident, to all common properties that disturb? By its use, certain important results are obtained in a simple way. I would like to speak simply. You. Bleached convoy, my words flutter on no flag. Without fire, they relinquish their missives reflectively, casting a negative, an old fury now quelled into a neutral desire to simply see, to recover what conjured forth a name. Some is inevitably lost. Bow slowly and rise, transforming the crown of the head into a vertical suspiration. Strive to announce a perfectly quiet reception in the limbs, now steadfastly affirmed by their polar coordination. Find purchase in the dark curling swarm that were once toes. If the disturbance has a scalar quantity, if the disturbance produces a similar disturbance at a neighboring point at a slightly later time, if the disturbance is continuously transformed from one place to another, what is neglected in the present discussion? Strive to determine the initial conditions, flower into what must hold. Thank you all so much.
Wow, this has been so wonderful. Good job, everybody. It's my pleasure to introduce our last reader, Gabriel Ojeda-Sagué. Gabi is a queer Latinx poet and writer who lives in Chicago, where he's currently a PhD candidate in English at the University of Chicago. I've had the pleasure of working with Gabi on social media content to support the recent release of his new book, Madness, which we just published at Nightboat. Madness is the selected poems of a fictional poet who was imagined by Gabi named Luis Montes Torres, a gay Cuban exile who makes a minor name for himself in the world of poetry before his day-to-day life becomes overwhelming, stilted, and impossible. It is a meditation on a poet's life that flows expertly between poetry and biography as it shows the elements of everyday life and fantasy that are woven into the fictions around a literary figure. I'm in awe of Gabi's imagination and his ability to move between different forms. Welcome, Gabi.
Hey, everybody. I'm really happy to be here. I was sort of joking to the panelists, but it's in no way a joke that if this reading was happening and did not include me, it's a reading I would have been really excited to go to. This book, Madness, is a book very much about bibliophilia, and a lot of the people in the audience and a lot of the people on this group of readers were in some way important to its coming together. So I'm just very thankful to be here. I also want to put in a little plug. I'm having my book launch in a week on Zoom, which I'm just gonna like drop a link in the chat to, with Ali Warren and Ricardo Alberto Maldonado, both of whom I really like. It's hosted through Bureau of General Services Queer Division. So hey, if you want to come, it's like literally like this time next week, like the exact same thing. So you're probably free. So, you know, think about it. So, as Lena said, Madness is a book that has this kind of nested narrative that it's a selected poems for a fictional poet. So the books are invented, the poems are mine, etc. It's organized into 9 books by Luis Montes Torres. And I'm gonna read a book selection called Dictation. And Dictation comes at a point where Luis, who has always been and will always be a sad obsessive, becomes a bit more obsessive and a bit less sad, a bit more obsessive, a bit angrier. And so this is one of 2 of the books that I think one could describe kind of as like a Jeremiad. So this is called Dictation. Changing color of water in response to the introduction of chemicals, an imprecise dictation, an icicle from the index finger all the way to the brain. Yellow color in water in response to the introduction of chemicals, an imprecise dictation, an icicle from the index finger all the way to the brain. Increased levels of plastic in water in response to the introduction of plastic, an imprecise dictation, an icicle from the index finger all the way to the brain. Decreased levels of fish in water in response to the introduction of chemicals, an imprecise digitalization, an icicle from the index finger that reaches towards but never reaches the brain. Changing weight of water in response to the introduction of water, an imprecise dictation, an icicle from the water all the way to the brain. I saw salt in water in response to the introduction of salt in water, an imprecise dictation, an icicle from the index finger all the way to the brain. Sound of water, call and response with chemicals, an imprecise dictation, an icicle from the index finger all the way to the other index finger. Changing color of water in response to the introduction of water into the city, an imprecise dictation of what is hurting in the space between the finger and the brain. Changing color of water in response to the introduction of water into the city, dictation of the subway now covered in something like an icicle. The thought that water will be akin to reading or akin to chemicals, an imprecise dictation, passing the index finger over grass as it yellows. I watch a change of color in response to the introduction of chemicals, dictation of the precipice, an icicle cutting the index finger, an icicle cutting the brain. Changing span of water in response to the introduction of heat, an imprecise dictation, no icicle, no brain. Changing span of water in response to the introduction of heat, the lie of dictation, an icicle that takes the fault piercing the heel. Decreased levels of oxygen in water in response to the activity of other animals, an imprecise dictation, the impatience between the hand that pulls the curtain and the curtain itself. Decreased levels of plankton in water in response to the introduction of chemicals, the eager disposition of the open mouth expecting plankton. Boat along the water where someone looks back expectantly in response to chemicals, icicles, dictation, lost souls, salinization. Changing color of water as it rises, as it evaporates, an imprecise dictation, an icicle from the index finger all the way to the brain. Reflected in rising water, the gasp between clouds, an upside down bird, an imprecise dictation where an icicle is melted by days of rain. Increasing levels of chemicals in water, the sound of a can coming back to the shore, an imprecise dictation, an icicle from the index finger all the way to the brain. Changing color of water in response to the introduction of chemicals, an imprecise dictation, an icicle from the index finger all the way to the brain. The sky over the canal, how I responded with anger to what I saw floating in the water, an imprecise dictation, an icicle from the index finger all the way to the brain. I thought it was a mannequin. I thought it was a dog or something, a cat maybe. I thought it was a big bag. I thought it was some garbage. I thought it was driftwood. I thought it was a log burning. I thought it was a Halloween prank. I thought it was a tailor's dummy. I thought it was just someone passed out. I thought it was a joke. I thought it was debris. I thought it was a drunk person. I thought it was a dud. I thought it was a case with a handle on it. I thought it was an animal. I thought it was something you grabbed to get out of the water. I thought it was a big turtle on a log. I thought it was just a NyQuil. I thought it was all just part of the attraction. I thought it was a prop. I thought it was a doll. I thought it was a large rat. I thought it was a barrel. I thought I had seen him before. I thought it was a kid playing. I thought I was being tricked. I thought I was dreaming it. I thought it was a tree fallen over. I thought it was a stone. I thought it was impossible. I thought it was an alligator. I thought I was going to faint. I thought it was something else. I thought it was going to move eventually. I thought it was trash a neighbor threw in. I thought it must have been something plastic. I thought a fish had died or something. I thought it was someone swimming. I thought it was part of the scene. I thought it was a deer since it was by the road. I thought I was going to be sick. I thought it was just a puppet or something. I thought about my kids almost immediately. I thought it was maybe a sleeping bag. I thought it was teenagers messing around in the canal. It was like driving a long time. A cut on the left foot just before the big toe with a friend, maybe at night, and thinking together. A cut on the face on the right cheek in a form of quiet. A cut below the belly button. It was easier than I was told. A circular arm, circular sore on the arm, maybe ringworm, and I quickly made myself scarce. A wide scrape above the right eye. Imagine myself in a movie where I died. A deep gash in the left calf, which will require stitches, and came back again as steam or as silicone. A beet red rash going up the back to the nape of the neck. It was like driving a long time. A cut opening the right eye. I pictured my friend forgetting me. Various scuff marks along both knees. I pictured a house floating on water. A deep narrow wound on the left side reaching the diaphragm. I pictured rubbing alcohol poured into the canal. I cannot control what I hear or its relationship to what you say. A bottle buried in sand, a receipt landed on the pond, lily pads. I cannot separate a siren from the pitches it shifts between. Hairspray picked up by breeze or a Ziploc bag cooked by the sun. Your intentions are revealed by the placement of your arms. I do everything but listen. I dream about the canal, snails on a swing set. If I put my hands in water, if I put your hands in tar. If I put my hands in water, if I put your hands in tar. If I put my hands in water, if I put your hands in tar. If I put my hands in water, if I put your hands in tar. If I put my hands in water, if I put your hands in tar. If I put my hands in water, if I put your hands in tar. If I put my hands in water, if I put your hands in tar. If I put my hands in water, if I put your hands in tar. If I put my hands in water, if I put your hands in tar. If I put my hands in water, if I put your hands in tar. Changing color of water in response to the introduction of chemicals. An imprecise dictation, unproven, obsessed with, smoke over the city. Changing weight of water in response to the introduction of weight, an imprecise dictation, unproven, obsessed with, smoke over the city. Churning between marble pillars, water responding to its weight, an imprecise dictation, unproven, obsessed with, smoke over the city. Separation is impossible in response to chemicals, to weight, an imprecise dictation, unproven, obsessed with, smoke over the city. I see spots in my vision, lead and ice, tar and cream, awful weight, an imprecise dictation, unproven, obsessed with, smoke over the city. Something clear gaining color in response to the introduction of chemicals, reddening, unproven, obsessed with, smoke over the city. Thanks so much, all.
Wow, Gabi, that was fantastic. I just want to say thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Thank you to the Nightboat team, and thank you to all of our fabulous and brilliant readers, Cody-Rose, Angel, Wayne, Juliette, and Gabi. Each of their books are available for purchase off of our website, nightboat.org, where you can also join our mailing list for future updates and readings. Please be sure to check us out on social media. We're on Twitter as Nightboat Books, all one word, and then on Instagram as Nightboat_books. Thank you again and have a great rest of your evening.